Okay, welcome to class this evening. And this is a next in our series of the spine as stable mobility. And just go ahead and bring yourself to standing. And we'll just arrive here this evening and find out what kind of senses show up for you in the relationship of how your feet make contact with the ground and how you allow support of Mother Earth to come up through you, not just through your feet, but through all of you. Well, Feldenkrais, the man, would always talk about efficiency as being where each bone is able to sit at the highest point on the bone below it. And sort of like a tightrope walker, it's not just sitting there statically, but there's this little kind of a give. So where the calcaneus sits relative to the next bone, which is the talus, and each up the line. And a really important place that is able to be studied and understood is where the femur, the ball of the femur, articulates with the pelvis. So you just kind of sense how does Mother Earth buoy you up in this way from underneath, where each bone sort of helps lift the bone above it and the bone above it so that the soft tissue can do the minimal amount of work. So we just notice how that occurs, which will have something to do with wondering exactly where you locate your right hip joint and your left hip joint. And if you locate them inside of you depth-wise, front to back, and inside of you depth-wise up and down. And if they're different, one is, for almost everybody, one is likely more clear than the other in sensation. And then just a little bit, take both shoulders and just a little bit curl them forwards, just a little bit, like you were going to let the upper back round a little bit, and then gently bring them backwards. You're not like trying to go into a military posture or anything like that. Just a little bit, let them curl forwards and feel what happens to your sternum, your ribs, and then a little bit let them unfold and sort of unfurl backwards. And so you just feel that as your shoulders come forward, there's potentially a change in how you sit through that relationship of your hip joint, through the femur and the pelvis. And then as the shoulders kind of furl backwards a little bit, just feel how it articulates the femur and the cup of the pelvis differently. And if it's more clear or easy to have that happen through the right side or the left side. Good. And then rest. And then just ever so gently begin to fold forwards a little bit diagonally, like you're going to bring your right hand in the direction of your left knee. Just a little bit. You're just going to begin to sort of bring yourself so your right hand kind of comes forward towards your left knee, and you let whatever happens happen in order to go there. Like you have to let something fold, and you come back, and you just feel that rotational flexion movement. And do it a couple of times, noticing how you go there and how you relate your shoulders and your hips on both sides. And then come back and do the same thing with your left arm to your right knee. Doesn't matter if you touch, it really doesn't have anything to do with touching. And observe. Good. Okay. And then just go take a little walk for a second and just notice how that same thing we were asking in the beginning about how the earth buoys you up. Notice it, how you get buoyed up with each step. There's a way that we come into the ground, but if we come too far, too fast, too much into the ground, we get collapsed. And if we pull up away from it, then we're up and not grounded. So there's a way that there's a relationship between the two. And your spine has to be a bridge and a spring and an undulating kind of relationship between that. And come and lie on your back with your arms and legs long. Give yourself a moment to check in and notice your contact that you make with the ground. Arms and legs long, and just notice the length of them as you lie. And that same thing we were noticing in standing. Just feel the relationship between your shoulders and your hips. Just feeling whether one shoulder feels more back or forwards than the other, and whether one shoulder feels more back or forwards than your hips, or your hip feels more back or forwards than your shoulder. So back and forwards has to do with going towards the ceiling and towards the floor. Gently roll your head from side to side, sensing, again, as the head rolls, how free can you feel that movement through to your spine? Can you feel that there's a relationship that changes ever so slightly the contact behind your shoulder blades, and the spine turns, and how far down through you can you sense that? Good. Take a full rest. And just notice, if you were going to roll on your belly, which side would you roll towards? You can feel which side your head and face and spine are inclined to go towards. Maybe you feel that through your leg. Maybe you can't really tell, but there's some intuitive part in you that says, oh, I'd go this way. You just feel as soon as I say it, you go that way. So go the way that was your first inclination and roll onto your belly, and just feel, how do you do it? How do you use the ground? How do you turn the spine and the pelvis? And then as you end up on your belly, notice which way your head turns, and which way it's more comfortable for you to have the head turned. And turn it to the other side, just to be clear that often it's the neck that's not comfortable, but it might not be that. It's like, it's not just the neck. Does it influence how your shoulder lays, or is there's some sort of a different relationship in your lumbar spine or your hip? So you know which way is easier. And then both of you bring your face to the left. Turn your face to the left. And just begin with your face to the left. Both arms are framing your face. So your elbows are bent at a comfortable place on either side of your head. And So some part of the temple and the cheek and the side of the face on the right side is making contact with the ground. And just begin a little bit to roll your pelvis to the right and back to the center. So you just roll your pelvis to the right and back to the center. And even just the littlest bit of rolling your pelvis invites your legs to turn, right? So the dorsum of the foot, where it's making contact with the ground, turns the whole leg, turns the knee, the contact changes. And can you begin to turn the pelvis to the right in such a way that it de-weights the left side of your pelvis a little bit, and you can feel there's a place where your left leg sort of turns in. It turns in, so the weight goes more towards the inside edge of the ankle and the knee. And just find that place where you can exert the least amount of work and begin to let the turning of your pelvis slide that left leg up towards what I'll often call a frog leg position, right? It's often a baby-like sleeping position. Yeah, where the left side of your pelvis is lifted a little bit. The weight is more on the right side of the pelvis. And you bring that leg up and let it rest somewhere. It doesn't have to be pulled up as high as it can. It's just a comfortable distance. But wherever that is, your knee will be bent and your hip will be bent, and there won't be contact probably under your left, the front of your pelvis and your left hip. That will be raised from the floor. And you'll also notice just like how much of your spine turns and how evenly does that turn occur in your spine. How comfortable is the knee and the ankle to be there. And you can feel that when you're in this organization, it clarifies, or it has the potential to clarify the shape of your pelvis more, right? So you can feel your sitting bone more clearly on the left side, even though you're not sitting on it, right? Your ischial tuberosity, the bottom of your pelvis, which is usually lost to us when we lie on our back or our stomach. And a lot of times even on our side, because it's not touching anything. But when you flex your leg up like this, it sort of touches the soft tissue to the bone, and it brings more of an awareness to the nervous system, as if you were more towards a sitting organization. So feel the sitting bone, the ischial tuberosity, with your felt sense, not your hand. And then feel the weight on the inside of the knee. And of course, being up like this potentially invites the two shoulder blades to rest slightly differently, because that turn may be echoed up through your spine, the turn of your hip and your leg. And it potentially changes where the weight is on the side of your face. So now that you've noticed all those things up your spine and your chest and your shoulder blades and your head, slowly let the leg back down and then bring it back up again, and see if you can track all of those things that happen through you as you slide the leg up and down a few times. So go very slow, mostly feeling how you change your orientation to the ground, how the spine makes very small little adjustments as it comes up. And the right leg has to do something to enable bringing the left leg up. So the next time your leg is up, leave it there. And now begin a little bit. It's not to see really very high at all. It would be like enough to slide a sheet of paper, okay? So it's not about trying to lift your leg high, but can you begin to find a way to begin to de-weight your left knee a little bit? So I don't like to use that word lift, but it's kind of like it raises a little bit from the floor, enough to slide one sheet of paper sort of smoothly underneath of there. Much easier said than done, yeah? So like, what do you have to do to lift your knee? Because your knee is it's a significant place of contact right now. So the only way to do it is to begin to learn how to use the ground differently through the right side of your pelvis and to let your spine turn differently, to find a way to put the weight distributed through you differently in order to de-weight the left knee a little bit. And so find out, do you de-weight it more by turning? Do you de-weight it more by folding or sideways bending or some combination? What happens between your left shoulder and your left hip in order to find a way to de-weight your knee? You will not move that peripheral part of you without the more proximal, the more centered joints, right? Your hip and your shoulder, coordinating in a way to move that much of your mass that's actually creating somewhat of a post right now for you. It's a pretty strong constraint. Good. Then rest that and begin to explore a similar thing with your left elbow. So keep your left leg bent up though. So keep it in the frog leg. And now begin to explore, how do you begin to lift the left elbow? Now, the left elbow is easier to lift. You don't have as much weight on it usually. So it's not even so much about how high can I lift it, but can I sense what I can do from the center of me, more towards the center of me, my shoulder blades, my spine, in order to reduce the weight on my left elbow. And feel it's like if I was a bird, right? I'd be lifting my wing just a little bit and then setting it down. Feel what my spine has to do all the way down to my lumbar spine and the lumbosacral area, the SI joints, in order to lift and a little bit lower the elbow. So now it's easier to lift this for more than one sheet of paper, right? So you could lift it a little bit. Have an idea as you lift it that it's a little bit lengthening long away from you, just a little bit. You lift and sort of lengthen. And feel when you lift and lengthen, what that invites to happen in your spine. Good. Now, rest. After having done that, come back and de-weight your left knee again and find out. If you de-weight your left knee a little bit, it'll be way less than your elbow. Find out if it's any easier. After we did this with your elbow, is it easier to de-weight your left knee? Find out if by doing your elbow, you woke up something in your spine that actually helps you do your knee lift. Yeah, but not ballistically, right? So it's not lift and then plop back down. Lift gently and then lower in a very undulating kind of way. How fluid can that happen for you? How smooth? Good, beautiful. Now, rest everything and come onto your back and take a full rest. Notice, how do you get there? Arms and legs down long. And now feel, by working from the periphery like this, what you feel gets invited to maybe be woken up or to be participatory or somehow have something to do with the peripheral movement, the movement that's further away from the center. Find out what the center has to do with the movement of the extremities. Notice your contact and how it might be different. Than when we started. Roll your head a little bit from side to side. And just sense as you roll your head from side to side, just feel how that moves down through your trunk. And if you feel any more involvement in the center of you, like you could even imagine slowly as your head turns to the right, would that begin to invite one of your shoulders to raise a little bit from the floor? And as your head turned to the left, does that invite a shoulder to come forwards? Remember that test movement we did in standing, where you were standing and I said, oh, just gently reach towards your opposite knee. Just find out as your head turns. Which arm would your head turning invite to move a bit forwards? Remembering forwards is in the direction towards the ceiling. And which arm when you turn your head the other way? And just feel that relationship from the periphery to the center. Now, find out which way it would be easier for you to roll, which is the inclination, and then roll that way onto your belly. And let yourself just land as you do, right? Which way your head goes most easily, and just sense your contact, how your legs lie, what the contact is, just as when you land spontaneously, without making any kind of an assumption that you know which way your head should go as far as the lesson is concerned. That's it. So you just rest. Usually we'll end up with the face towards the more comfortable side. So now just test the face turn to the other side and feel if you turn your face to the other side, did you turn it to the easier side first? Did the easier side change than what it was before? Are they both easier? What's different? And then have both of you with your face to the right, and sense how you lie when your face is to the right. Do you rest on a different part of the ear and the temple and the cheek? And you just feel the shape of the spine when your face is turned to the right. And you can feel that the possibility when your face is turned to the right and your both arms are framing up on either side of your head. You can feel the possibility of it's a very deep primal sort of capacity that when the face is turned, it already invites the spine to turn and it already begins to prepare for you to slide one leg up. It's a very old pattern that we learned in order to prepare for crawling. So you can feel that when your face is turned to the right, there's an invitation to begin to turn your pelvis a bit to the left in preparation for sliding the right leg up. So just play with just turning your pelvis a little to the left with your face to the right. Your face is turned to the right and you turn your pelvis to the left in order to find the smoothest, most fluid way to de-weight the right front of your pelvis and de-weight your hip. But that turn doesn't just occur in your hip, right? Your legs may turn, but the turn really occurs in the SI joints and it invites the turn to move up through your spine. It's not just turning your legs, it's turning your pelvis, which will turn your legs probably. And then find that way to gently let the turning of the pelvis going to the left begin to, beautiful, begin to feel how the weight just very smoothly sort of pours onto the inside edge of the thigh or the knee and the thigh and the inside edge of the ankle until you could find a way to gently, with the least amount of effort, slide that right leg up towards a baby frog leg. Just a little bit. See how much you can let it slide up there and not really lift it to get up there. You could You could go up and down a few times, bring it up, and then initiate bringing it back down through your pelvis. Like, what would you have to, there, that's beautiful. What would you have to do through your pelvis to bring the leg up and down? And through letting the pelvis turn the spine, and it changes the contact up through the shoulder blades in the front of the chest. I realize the shoulder blades are not in contact, but they change their contact on your ribs. And then next time the right leg is in a frog leg, leave it there. And rest. It's observing your breath. It's that lesson we did last week of being able to feel the breath in your sides and the breath as we fold the ribs and the pelvis towards each other and unfold the ribs and the pelvis away from each other, even though we did it in side lying. It has a relationship here, doesn't it? Because when you're turned like this, your right side is more accordion closed and your left side is more accordion opened right now. So the overall amplitude of the breath might not be the same, but the capacity to be able to have it be free in all planes is still there. So you can just notice how that lives in you right now. And if you just began to imagine lifting or raising the right knee, so not even really doing it, just imagine the feeling. Like, how could you, the most gentle, interact with the ground in order to de-weight the right knee in your imagination so that it happens really smoothly, and whatever needs to fold and smoothly change its shape in the center of you can do so. How the right side is engaged in assisting with that action. Smoothly lifting the right knee. You could do it in actuality a couple of times and feel. When that knee raises, is it more connected to your center than it was when you were in the other frog leg? And as the knee raises on the right side, what does it invite to happen in your shoulder blades and your shoulders? Just like we did with the elbow on the other side, as you lift the knee, could you a little bit lengthen it? Could you a little bit let it lengthen away from you as it lifts and then lowers? Thank you. And then rest that, staying on your belly with your right leg bent up, frog leg, and begin to bird wing lift your right elbow. And you just find out, because your arm is, first of all, there's more degrees of mobility in your shoulder than there is in your hip and SI, and it's not as heavy, and you don't have as much weight on it. So it's easier. So it's not about how far can you lift it. It's how smooth can you still have this kind of lengthening as you lift happen from the center of you. And how can the invitation of the arm lifting invite something to happen through the leg? And the only way that can happen is something has to be related through the spine. What would have to happen if you were going to a little bit now, so rest rest the elbow, but what would have to happen if you were going to find a way to have both the elbow and the knee raise enough for one sheet of paper at the same time? What has to happen? How do you have to use the ground to coordinate the action of the elbow, which means you have to do something with the shoulder blades at the same time that you do something with the hip and the SI to de-weight your knee and your elbow? It's kind of like if that was the length of your leg and your arm, That's what we're studying. We're studying sort of a shorter leg and an arm here, and how to let the center do an action at the outset, at the periphery, with the least amount of effort. You have to coordinate something through your right side. Now just come back and just lift the knee a few times. Just feel if you just raise the knee, and that's beautiful. And a little bit, it lengthens a little bit. Like, how can you lift it and lengthen it? Meaning the knee lengthens, not the leg. The knee lengthens somehow. That's it. Which is different than straightening your knee. Good. Rest everything. Let your both legs down flat again. Keep your arms framing your face, and just lie on your belly with your face to that side. And notice what feels different about that from when you first rolled over. And then from this organization with your face to the right, how do you bring yourself back onto your back smoothly? Yeah. How could this action enable you to bring yourself onto your back? Noticing how your shoulders and your hips have this way of turning from the center, and then it sort of radiates out to the periphery. That's the most efficient action for humans, is that the center radiates movement to the periphery. Beautiful. Let everything rest. Take a full rest on your back, observing how you lie. Roll your head a little bit from side to side. And notice how the turning of your head relates down through your spine now. You remembered when you first laid down and we tested that movement. And for any of you doing ATM, you've done this rolling of your head many times. So it's not just when you first laid down that you're comparing it to, but any of the other times that you have compared it, that all those sensations live in you for your system to learn. Find out which way would be the inclination for you to roll to your belly now. And how would you do it? Would you flex the legs up? Would you keep one long and turn around, one on the floor? Like, how would you do it? What's the relationship between your shoulder and your hip as you turn your spine? You think about it, we're a sort of wieldy creature, right? To have to turn from the center and then move these really fairly mobile extremities. And it's really kind of a feat to go from being on your back to being on your belly. You have to move directly into gravity and move this. Now, as an adults, we don't think about that, but boy, it takes us months to learn how to do this as babies. And it's really important as adults because we usually do not do it efficiently. So come on to your belly and find out, how do you go there? How smoothly and fluidly can you go there? Find out which way is easier, which way is preferred to have your face turned, which means you'll have to feel how it is with one direction and then turn it the other direction and see what feels different. There might not be as big of a difference now. Often if it becomes easier in your neck, it's because something has shifted in your chest and your further down in your ribs that has allowed there to be more rotation further through your spine so that your neck doesn't try to sort of cram itself towards the extreme of the cervical rotation. Have both arms framing your face. And now, just begin to roll your pelvis from one side to the other, and do that in such a way that you slide one leg up towards a frog leg, and then you let that come back down, and then you let the pelvis slide the other leg up towards a frog leg. It doesn't have to be that like big far up frog leg, right? It could just be a little bit, but have it be that you don't plop, right? You slide the leg up as the result of the turn of the pelvis and the spine. And you let the leg get slid up, and then you turn the pelvis and the spine to let the leg get slid down. So now you're going alternately from one side to the other. And you just feel the difference. And your face is to one side, so it's going to influence that. And then gently turn your face to the other side and let your pelvis do the same thing. And just find out, is it easier to let your pelvis go alternately when your face is to the right or to the left? The direction that your face is facing is going to have something to do with the invitation, right? It already invites your spine to turn one way. So your pelvis will be turning with your head in one direction, and it will be turning counter to the rotation of your head and neck in the other direction. Now, turn your head so that you put your forehead on the floor, right? Which will mean you have to elongate your neck a little bit and bring your nose and your chin a little bit towards the back of your head so that you don't smash your nose and your chin. So your neck will be a little bit extra long, not a lot, but a little bit. Hands are still framing your face, but now your weight is on the forehead. And now do the same thing and begin to roll your pelvis from side to side. And see if you can feel, if you go slow enough with the weight on your forehead, see if you can feel when you go to frog leg the right leg, which elbow would you want to lift a little bit? And when you frog leg the left leg, which elbow would you want to lift a little bit? And try it. Go slow. If you frog leg the right leg, try lifting the left elbow a tiny bit, and then come back, and then frog leg the left leg and lift the right elbow. So that's the relationship of the diagonal. And you could have this idea that they were both lengthening a little bit. It's like the frog leg, as it's coming up, the knee is lengthening, and it's inviting the opposite elbow to lift. Feel that relationship and what the spine has to do. And then rest. You can turn your face one way or the other to rest for a moment. Just sense your breath, whichever way your face is turned. You can sense how the ability for the ribs to expand back towards the ceiling, down towards the floor, out to the right and left sides, up towards the top of your head and down towards the pelvic floor. And it'll be slightly different probably with your face turned to one side. Doesn't matter the total amplitude, because that's going to be impacted by which way your face is turned, but is the capacity to sense all 6 directions still there? Now bring your head back to the weight on the forehead. Arms are framing your face on either side. And see how gently you can begin to roll in frog leg, one leg, and the other. See if it can become less and less work that goes on in your legs, and that the turning of the spine through the ground is what begins to turn the pelvis and the legs. And there's just this coordination of activity that frog legs the leg a little bit. And now when the frog legs up to the right, could you find a way to lift the right elbow? So you do the movement we were doing a little bit ago on the same side, just a little bit. And then when the frog legs to the left, you lift the left elbow. The forehead, the weight stays on the forehead. So you're not necessarily turning your face. You may find that the eyes and the face turns a little bit, but the weight just rolls across the forehead, maybe a little bit from left to right. You'll feel a little tendency possibly for your face to turn, but only with your nose still relatively towards the floor. Yeah, and find out, is it easier when you lift the same elbow to coordinate this turn through the spine? Or as you roll in frog leg from side to side, is it easier to find a relationship to the hip and shoulder when you lift the opposite elbow? Or you could try one a few times, try the other a few times. There's not one right way of doing it. They're distinctly different patterns. Probably one is more habitual, or maybe even one side is more habitual in the pattern. And you find out what you know. Good. Now, let everything down. Turn your face one way or the other. Let your legs be flat. Stay on your belly. And just notice how you land on your belly now in comparison to when you first went over there. Sensing the length of your legs, which way your face is turned, how that impacts the turn through your spine, your scapula's lying. And then gently turn your face to the other side and feel the comfort level of lying on your belly with your face to this side. Notice if one side is still distinctly more familiar or more habitual than the other, or if they become more similar. Good. Find a way to bring yourself onto your back from this lesson and smoothly let your pelvis roll. That was beautiful. Let your pelvis roll you onto your belly. Onto your back. That's nice. Beautiful. Find a way to land and sense Mother Earth buoying up through you now. Noticing the length of your arms and your legs. The shape of your spine. Gently roll your head from side to side. And feel now, as you roll your head to the right, which arm and shoulder would lift a little bit? And would it lift towards the same side or the opposite side? So if you were going to reach with your right arm towards the left knee, which way would your head turn? If you were going to reach with your left arm towards your right knee, which way would your head turn? Which way would your spine turn? Just sense the relationship. The very first relationship we noticed when you laid down is this idea of where your shoulders are. Are they furled a little bit forwards or backwards? Are your hips a little bit closed, towards flexion, or a little bit more open towards extension? That has something to do with the shape of your arch in your lumbar spine, probably, and how the backs of your knees are resting. I just feel if it's more possible for you to be able to roll yourself to come to standing through the right and to the left, or if there's still a pretty strong tendency towards one side. Whichever side you prefer, roll to your side and come up to standing. Just bring yourself into gravity, sense the contact as it is between your feet and the ground, and how you feel the ground buoy those bones up to meet the next, to meet the next, to meet the next. Really with this buoy kind of little give in the soft tissue and even in the bones, particularly the ankle and the hip, and the relationship where the shoulder blade and the collarbone come together, and the collarbone and the sternum come together. That has something to do with the relationship of where your head rests and how it's supported. And just the littlest bit again, just a little bit furl your shoulders forwards and backwards and feel how much of your chest, feel how much you can feel the shoulders moving, undulating through the chest. So it's not your shoulders, but they invite your collarbones and your ribs and your shoulder blades and your spine, and therefore reverberate down to the sacrum, up to the head. And they furl a little forwards and back, and feel if you can feel that moves all the way down, and maybe it invites you to shift your weight a little bit on your feet. Your pelvis changes its shape. Good. And then standing, reaching very gently one hand towards the opposite knee, and just find out how do you do that, which hand goes, and which diagonal that relates to for you. Was that the diagonal of the frog leg that you brought up easier, or the other? Like, what's the difference if you bring your right hand towards your left knee and you bring your left hand towards your right knee? And how does that relate to this lesson? So as you bring your hand to your knee, it has something to do with your hip and your shoulder and your spine. Your hand and your knee are sort of just the end of the hose, right? The power comes from the center where the water comes out of the house. Good. And then just gently come to standing. Take a few steps and walk. Noticing how you walk, what might feel different in the reverberation as you step. You feel movement come up and buoy up through the ankle joint, which there's really two of them, your knee and your hip, all the way up through the spine. Good. So we'll let you go for this evening. Enjoy this potential new springiness, and I'll see you next week. Take care. Bye-bye.